Welcome, everybody, to the Inside Boxing Daily Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. And Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by BetDSI.eu. If you want to bet on the fights tomorrow night, you can get a 100% cash back bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Just use the promo code TGT at BetDSI.eu. We are also brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson, Alex Ramos. They do a great job there. Check them out on Facebook. And Seat Giant. You can use the promo code TGT at Seat Giant to get a 5% discount on all your ticket purchases. All right, Jeremiah, we have a huge fight for the lineal heavyweight championship of the world tomorrow night as Tyson Fury fights the 6th-ranked German in the world in Germany. Why? I know Fury wants a little work, but Tom Schwarz, I mean, he makes Dominic Brazil look like Rocky Marciano.
He sure does. Yeah, I'm not impressed by whatever I've seen. I mean, again, I try to watch boxing, and I cover, a lot of the guys who are on the fringes and whatnot, but Tom Schwarz is not a name that I'm familiar with. And after looking at some of the highlights there's a good reason why I'm not. And why I probably won't be that familiar with his career after Tyson Fury likely outboxes his head off. I don't understand, man. I guess if they're staying busy, and waiting on the Deontay Wilder rematch, after all, Anthony Joshua got knocked out. So now they've definitely, because had Anthony Joshua won, I wouldn't have cared. I'd have been like, well, after Tom Schwarz, let's make Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. But since that is scrapped until next year, it just seems like the rematch is definitely the fight that we're going to get, at least between him and Wilder. That's the one that we're all going to be, clamoring for, while we wait. But of course, who knows? Deontay Wilder might suffer something like the Ruiz stoppage himself. But yeah, man, it's not that exciting. I mean, Schwarz he's okay. He's a good European level fighter. He doesn't really bring a ton of hand speed, or he doesn't bring much pop. I mean, I think it was Bob Arum or one of the two, maybe it was Fury himself, who said that they picked Tom Schwarz because he's like Deontay Wilder. Well, he's not. He doesn't look like him, doesn't fight like him. He's just not much like him. He's 3-4 inches shorter, doesn't have the same hand speed. It's just it doesn't really relate. But he did say that he plans on fighting 3 more times before the year is up. And so as I've elaborated on previous shows, it doesn't bother me too much if we get some guys like Tom Schwarz until we get the rematch. I'd like to see at least a top 10 guy sprinkled in there before we get that. Because after all, I got to give it to Deontay Wilder. He is fighting, Ortiz is old. I expect him to, blow Ortiz out in the rematch. But at least he's fighting a top 10 guy. So I'd like to see Fury do the same thing. But this, to me, looks like a clear mismatch. I'm just really hoping that Tyson Fury goes out there and tries to end things early for him at least.
If he wants to build this shit up with Wilder, he has to. He can't just come out and do it like he did the first 2 fights before he fought Wilder, where he just basically sleepwalked through everything.
Yeah, he can't. I mean, he's got to understand that his personality is, it's the most attractive in the heavyweight division, but he's got to put some style behind that. It's like he styles himself as kind of like a Muhammad Ali type figure, where he's, a classy boxer, and, he can dip and duck and dodge and dive and all that fancy stuff. But Ali knew when to turn it up when he had to, and he could get guys out of there. And I think Tyson Fury is capable of stopping these guys too. I mean, I saw him hammer Christian Hammer, who Povetkin couldn't stop and who Luis Ortiz couldn't stop. So I think the guy has a bit of punching power. Don't drag this out. Just go out and, box a little bit, maybe get a few rounds and then put him away.
Yeah, I like the way that everybody on ESPN is trying to make it sound like Tom Schwarz could be Andy Ruiz, because he's just not. Andy Ruiz almost beat Joseph Parker. Andy Ruiz has hand speed. He can punch a little bit. Schwarz doesn't. And with Fury, his weight isn't as bad as 276, the fight before he fought Wilder. But 263 is 7 pounds heavier, so you got to figure he's not taking this real seriously either.
No, I don't think so. And it's funny because even Fury himself said he probably put on a stone in a week, and I don't know if that's a good thing. But like you said, he looks a bit more muscular. He doesn't look as flabby as he did, even though he weighs a bit more here. But now Schwarz is not an Andy Ruiz type guy. Of course, it's the heavyweights. You know, anything could happen. This wouldn't be the most surprising upset I've ever seen in my life.
It would be up there, though, if you've watched Tom Schwarz fight a complete fight.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I had to rewrite my article on the 16 biggest upsets in boxing history.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to revise that one and republish it real quick. But again, I just Schwarz is just he doesn't present that big of a challenge. But I'm not that mad at it. I mean, it's like a again, it's more of like a stay busy thing. I'm just hoping he sticks to his word and fights 4 times this year, and I think he's going to be doing pretty well for himself.
All right, and the thing I really hate is Bob Arum. Nothing in particular that he did this time. I just hate Bob Arum. He just looks like an asshole.
He looks like a.
He just does. He looks like the dude that goes to a Sweet 16 birthday party and then feels up all the girls.
Yeah, he looks like a creep, man. He's just started to get that old guy hunch. And it just when you see his arms around the ring card girls, it just seems like there's something like he kind of looks like the Joker from what was it?
Batman?
Yeah, Batman. The old one from the 90s. Who was that?
Jack Nicholson?
Damn, who's the short guy who's in Philly? Nah, he's in the show. What is it? It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, Danny DeVito?
Yeah, I think that's who it is. Yeah, he looks like Danny DeVito in Batman there. I don't know, man. He just has a look about him that he just looks like a creep. I mean, I don't know. He just looks like a creep.
Well, he is a boxing promoter, so that in of itself makes you a creep usually.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's certainly got that look to him. But he's always trying to bullshit us. And right, he's talking about Manny Pacquiao. This is a little off topic, but he was in the news not long ago. I think it was a couple days ago. He's talking about how he's afraid Manny Pacquiao is going to get brain damage from fighting. I'm like, okay, man, when he was under your contract, like he wishes he wouldn't have said any of this stuff. He would have just milked him dry. And again, it's not as if Bob Arum hasn't done a good job with Manny Pacquiao and getting money and whatnot. But what I'm saying is if the shoe was on the other foot, he would have, zipped his lips and not said anything about it.
Yeah, I don't think that Bob Arum's ever cared about a fighter in his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's these promoters, right? He's talking crap about Pacquiao now that he's away. I mean, he's not getting, he's not throwing a lot of shit out there and, slandering him like some of these other guys are doing. But yeah, it's just one of those things like he wouldn't have cared. I mean, if Keith Thurman was under Top Rank, he would have had no problem at all pairing Manny Pacquiao and Keith Thurman. So it's just irrelevant. It's just, it's a typical bullshit you hear from these guys.
All right, real quick before we move on, if you have any questions, you can go to @GruelingTruth on the Grueling Truth or on Twitter and send us a direct message if you have any questions or tweet the question out, whatever you want to do there. Or you can hear us on Spreaker. Just look for the Grueling Truth Sports Network or Radio Network. I forget what it's under. And you can ask questions live on there. All right, speaking of Bob Arum being full of shit, he says he wants to make the unification fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. for the fall. Arum doubts Spence will face WBC welterweight champion Sean Porter or Canelo Alvarez, and he doesn't see either of those fights. Since he doesn't see either one of those fights happening, he thinks that this fight could get made. I don't think there's a chance in hell this fight gets made.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, we saw Bob Arum and Al Heyman play a little nice in pairing, Maurice Hooker and Ramirez. It's nice that they're, sort of shaking hands. I mean, obviously they haven't made up and things aren't hunky-dory, but it's a good sign. And again, if the drawing power is enough, I think eventually we'll get these two together. But as you're alluding to, it's not going to happen that soon. I don't know why anyone would expect it to. And it's not that I don't want it. I would love to see it this fall. The number 1 and number 2 guys, we'd get a new welterweight champion. These guys are highly skilled. I'd love it. But, when you're looking at the politics of everything and you look at PBC and what they've got on their side of the aisle, it just makes too much sense for them to give it up or try to negotiate right now. And Bob Arum, a typical promoter, right? He's been doing this for 7 decades or something, right? Yeah, something crazy, right? Since the 60s. He's trying to play it off as if it's not his fault. I mean, you even heard it after the Crawford fight where like, let's do 50-50 and let's do it in some neutral spot. Al Heyman's not going to play that ball right now. It's not because he's afraid or Spence is afraid or any of that stuff, but it's just because Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, and Sean Porter are waiting in the wings for him. Porter and Keith Thurman have done good numbers on free TV, been seen by millions, and Manny Pacquiao is an international superstar. So it only makes sense for them to try to go to the bargaining table with more leverage. And I think beating Sean Porter and beating the winner of Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, does just that. So again, it just makes sense. And I think maybe even Bob Arum is throwing that kind of stuff out there because he's afraid that Al Heyman might have a bit more leverage when it comes to sit down and talk. So it's just not going to happen. I guess you can never say never in boxing. I don't like to talk with absolute authority, but it just really doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. I would say late next year at the earliest, because again, you're going to have the Porter fight, options. And then exactly. Well, and if Danny Garcia beats Mikey Garcia, you never know. It could be Porter late this year, could be the winner of Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao early next year, and then it could be the winner of Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia late the next year. So, I think at the earliest it's late next year, but more than likely it could be late next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's early 2021.
All right, question from Hamed. If Fury loses to the Tom guy, do you consider him the lineal champion? Now, there's a second part to this question, but let's go ahead and answer the first part because to me, I don't consider Fury the lineal champion. I don't know how. I pretty much know how you feel, but from the rules of the lineal championship, at least when I was growing up, you couldn't take 2.5 years off and still be the lineal champion.
Well, yeah, well, yeah. So, I don't consider him the lineal champion either. It's one of those things that seems to be debated, and I don't really care which side of the aisle you fall on because I have to say, it's not as if heavyweight champions haven't taken time off, come back, and been considered the champion. But I just don't think either way. That's a point that I actually brought up in a previous show. If you remember, I said, well, if Tom Schwarz beats Tyson Fury, how many guys are actually going to call Schwarz the lineal champion afterwards? So that's kind of what I make of it, is that it just seems like it's a precarious claim. And it's not as if I wouldn't like Fury to be the lineal champion. I actually, in this day and age, with all these alphabet title holders running around and, people talking, I actually saw a poll in 2 boxing groups today where people are like, okay, what would you rather see? Would you rather see Andy Ruiz versus Deontay Wilder, which would make them undisputed, or would you rather see, Wilder Fury 2 for the lineal claim? And I'm like, well, how can you be undisputed if you think that Tyson Fury is also the lineal champion? It doesn't make sense. You can hold all the belts and still not be the champion. And we've talked about this time and time again on the show. That's what makes this sport so stupid. Just absolutely nonsensical that you could be quote unquote undisputed, yet your claim is disputed. It just doesn't make any sense. If you had Andy, I think if Wilder and Ruiz fought and they're, let's say number 2 and number 3, but Tyson Fury is number 1, how could you become the undisputed champion when it's not even the top 2 guys fighting? Other sports don't operate that way, so it doesn't make any sense for it to operate that way in this case. So I don't think Tyson Fury is the lineal champion, but I think to answer the question simply is if you do think he's the lineal champion and Tom wins, Tom has to be He
Yeah.
has to be. If
And
you don't think he's lineal, then it doesn't matter.
all right, the rest of the question: if you don't consider Fury lineal, what would it take to become lineal? Would the winner of Wilder Ruiz, assuming Ruiz beats AJ in a rematch, become lineal? Or does someone have to beat Fury or one guy to beat the other? The easiest way to me, Jeremiah, is Ruiz Joshua winner fights the winner of a Fury Wilder fight. I think then whoever comes out of those four is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah, I think that makes it pretty clear and dry. But if Anthony Joshua loses to Andy Ruiz, or if he beats Andy Ruiz, I think Anthony Joshua should be the number 3 guy, and I think Fury and Wilder should be number 1 and 2. And I think their rematch would probably settle it for me. The fact that Anthony Joshua was upset by a guy who couldn't beat Joseph Parker, to me, indicates that he's a number 3 guy, and Wilder and Fury, again, are number 1 and number 2. So I think the rematch settles it for me.
What about Ruiz, though? Because he did beat Joshua. And if you look at everything out there, I mean, the one with the least amount of competition win-wise, quality win-wise, would be Deontay Wilder. The best fighter he's beats, Luis Ortiz.
Yeah, I agree. No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the thing is, though, is Andy Ruiz, this is how I feel. I mean, it just feels to me like Wilder and Fury should be rewarded for not being upset. Again, here's my thing is I do think had Deontay Wilder fought the level of competition that Anthony Joshua has fought,
exactly,
and actually, yeah, I think he would have lost by now. Actually, if he fought the same competition that Tyson Fury has fought, I think he would have lost by now too. I actually don't think he would have beaten Vladimir Klitschko, had they fought. So I do believe that's true. However, they haven't fought the competition. So to me, it just seems like Fury and Wilder should be rewarded enough. Because here's the thing is Anthony Joshua is widely viewed as the number 1 guy, but I think the 1, 2, and 3 positions were all kind of viewed as like interchangeable until, they fought one another. But the fact that Joshua ended up getting upset by Ruiz, I don't know. It just feels like Wilder and Fury should be rewarded because of that. But I don't have any problem with saying, hey, whoever wins the rematch should be involved in that as well. I just think I'd like to make things simple and just say, hey, number 1, number 2,
Actually,
and I think that will be Fury and Wilder.
Just do it though, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I know, but what happens if Joshua wins? That's my problem. Is if Anthony Joshua beats Ruiz in the rematch, which he's slated to do according to the odds makers, if he wins, I mean, does he get the winner of, Fury and Wilder in the fall? I don't know. I mean, if there was a guarantee there that he would, then I would say, well, let's wait till that happens and settle it.
All right. What the heck? Also, I want to remind everybody, when we get off of here, you can go to the Grueling Truth Facebook page, and we will have the first fight between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Jose Luis Castillo, which Castillo won, no matter what Mayweather people want to tell you. But that fight will be on live on our Facebook page afterwards. Make sure if you don't like the page, you go there and like it. If you'd already had it, you'd have seen Mayweather Corrales earlier tonight. And coming up tomorrow, I think we might drop a little Kelly Pavlik out there for you, Jeremiah.
Oh, yeah? Against who?
I think Edison Miranda, maybe. And also this weekend, you'll be able to see George Foreman versus Ron Lyle, George Foreman versus Joe Frazier, the second fight, Salvador Sanchez versus Wilfredo Gomez, and then maybe a couple more surprises Sunday night, which could include the great Scott Ledoux.
Well, I'm looking forward to Sunday then. All the other ones I didn't even hear.
I know, because Scott Ledoux's going to be on. What else do you want to discuss, Jeremiah? We got some other fights. We got Kid Galahad tomorrow, which is, I think, Elvis Presley, at least it was in the movie, against Josh Warrington. Do you think there's any shot here for Kid Galahad?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I've seen some respectable boxing people who think that Galahad has a good shot here. Actually, I've seen a few guys favor him in this. And I think it's because Galahad has some pretty good boxing skills. Yeah, he's a pretty good mover. He's kind of been inactive, partly because he was caught with PEDs in his system. But I expect, and again, I'm not a big Galahad follower, so I just want to preface with that. So I don't want to act like I'm some sort of expert on his career. Again, because he did PEDs, he's just been kind of under the radar for me. But I expect, I've seen some of the actually Peterson. Damn it.
I think it's Patterson.
Yeah, Robbie Patterson. Exactly. He's active, and I appreciate him listening to the show and sending me messages. And like today, he sent me a video with Warrington, and it was kind of a hype video with Warrington and Galahad, and there was some bad blood, and Warrington actually seemed to be pretty amped up for this, so I think he's going to come to fight. Galahad, to me, again, is a good boxer, but Warrington is pretty good size. I don't think he hits that hard, but he hits hard enough to get a guy's respect. But I think he's just going to keep chugging along, and I think he'll do what he usually does, and he'll earn a decision win here.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, the big difference to me is the fact that Warrington has fought guys like Carl Frampton, Lee Selby, Kiko Martinez. And when you look at the other side, Kid Galahad may be talented, but he hadn't fought anybody of that quality, I don't think.
No, he hasn't. Well, that's what makes boxing dumb, doesn't it? Because we see this often. Like I saw somebody who posted a picture about how Jamal Charlo deserves his shot at Canelo Alvarez, and I'm just thinking to myself about a lot of these guys is that it would be nice to see guys beat contenders before they become contenders, but we see it all the time where these guys are starching fringe guys or decisioning fringe guys. And then, we don't know exactly what they've got, and all of a sudden they're stepping up to, world level opposition, and some of them are fine, some of them are not. It makes it hard to read into because they're not really being put in deep waters. Again, I mean, a lot of this is politics. We've been over this time and time again, but I think Warrington gets a decision here. If I'm wrong, don't make too much about it. Again, I'm no Galahad expert.
I won't bring it up again if you're wrong. That's only for John Einrenhofer. Next up, Sullivan Barrera fights Jesse Hart on the undercard in Vegas at the Fury Schwarz fight. What do you think about Sullivan Barrera, Jesse Hart? Because we already know Barrera's a solid fighter.
Yeah, I think Jesse Hart's a pretty good fighter too. I mean, he was rock solid against Gilberto Ramirez in 2 fights. I think he's again, I don't love the additional weight classes, but he was afterwards he was a legit top 10 guy. Again, the division's not particularly strong, but he's a go-getter. I mean, he's got good pop. He's pretty well rounded. He's aggressive, so I think he's going to make a fight of it. But at this stage, and again, it's hard to tell, because Barrera is 37, I think, at this point. So it's hard to tell exactly what Barrera is going to have left. Some guys just hit a wall. Others don't. Some can carry on in old age, like R.G. Moore and Bernard Hopkins and guys like that. But due to the skills, I mean, I think Barrera is the superior technician. He's a bit more accustomed to the weight division. He's got more experience at the top. So I expect him to get a decision win here. Hart's is tough enough, I think, to last a distance, but I'm favoring Barrera.
All right, we got a couple more fights I want to talk about. Then we have at least one more question from Hamed, and if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and ask them. We will get to them after we talk about a couple more fights. On DAZN tomorrow, great card, I think. Briedis against Glowacki. When you look at this, I looked on BetDSI. Briedis is a pretty good favorite here. What kind of shot do you give Glowacki?
Oh, I think he's got a rock solid shot.
I do too. I think he can win this fight, and I like the odds.
Yeah. Do you have the odds in front of you?
I can here in a second because it was more than 2 to 1 earlier this week. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and I'll just chit chat until you get him.
We'll chit
But
chat until I get them.
yeah, but yeah, after watching Maris Breedis struggle the last time out and get a decision most people thought he didn't deserve, I think Glowacki's chances are pretty good here. I mean, Glowacki to me, Breedis is kind of a spoiler. Like he's well rounded too. He's got pretty good hand speed. He's got pretty good pop. He can box a bit. He can brawl a little bit. But again, I think like most people, he got the decision that he probably didn't deserve. And so to me, looking at Glowacki, I watched him against Steve Cunningham. He's a good southpaw. He kind of crouches a little bit, big power, one of the better punchers at 199. To me, I haven't seen Glowacki's most recent fight, but he doesn't seem like he's slipped that much since he lost to Usyk.
Yeah, Glowacki,
so
is plus 178. That's almost 2-1 as an underdog against Breedis. Breedis is minus 217. Also, Warrington minus 345. Galahad is a plus 268 dog.
Okay, so just looking at those, I think that's a reason to get kind of excited. I mean, these things aren't considered blowouts. I mean, that's good whenever you have a boxing weekend that
and the next fight comprises, I'll give you is even closer in odds than those two fights.
Well, yeah, and I think it should be, but no, I think Glowacki's got a solid shot here. I mean, Breidis, after the Usyk fight, I thought, hey, maybe he's the second best cruiserweight in the world. But after watching him lose, I think it's up in the air right now. I mean, Glowacki may turn out to be the second best man in this. I mean, to me, when I look at because these guys are basically picking up the scraps of Alexander Usyk anyways. I mean, that's why I think Glowacki has been quote unquote promoted to, full WBC titleist or whatever the hell it is. And, I think that's what it is. And now Usyk is quote unquote champion in recess or something like that. But yeah, they're basically taking away Usyk's belts and then giving them to the guys who participated in the tournament to add a little value to it. And whatever, I don't care. The alphabet trinkets stink anyways. But, I think Glowacki's got a good shot here. Breidis is a tough guy, so I'm not exactly sure that Glowacki's going to knock him out. But after his last performance and the amount of shots that he took, wouldn't surprise me. But I'm going to favor Breidis by decision here, but I think it's going to be pretty tight.
All right, Sullivan Barrera is more than a 2-1 underdog against Jesse Hart also.
Wow. He's a 2-1 underdog, huh?
Yes, plus 208 for Sullivan Barrera right now.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. I mean, I guess I can see it. Hart is youthful compared to Barrera, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they're looking at Barrera's losing streak against the best opposition in the world, but I don't really think Jesse Hart would fare much better. So
no.
I'm still going with Barrera there. So yeah, it might be worth putting a little money on.
All right, next up we got Dorticos against Tabiti? Tabiti? Help me.
Yeah, that's right.
I got it right. All right. Tabiti is actually a plus 128 underdog. Dorticos is a minus 154 favorite. I think this fight's a toss-up. Yeah,
I agree, definitely. I mean, Dorticos was in the last, World Boxing Super Series tournament. He had the nice knockout over Kudryashov, who I think fought today or is fighting tomorrow morning for us. He was fighting Makumbu or something like that. I'm actually looking forward to that fight. I like Kudryashov. He's stiff as a board, but he can lay you stiff as a board.
How do you get excited about something you can't even watch?
Yeah, I can find it on YouTube. I always do, man.
Well, actually, ESPN Plus has a card too from Australia with the Maloney's. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, that's right. But this fight. This fight is pretty good. I mean, Tabiti is a Mayweather gym product. He's got a good jab. He's pretty sharp. His hand speed is good. His power is it's all right. He's not really a knockout guy, but when Dorticos was in the last World Boxing Super tournament. Again, he had that knockout over Kudryashov, which was nice, and then he had the fun scrap with Murat Gassiev. He can hit a bit. He's got some technical ability, though I think his punches are a bit raw. I see why he's the favorite. Just because he has more experience at the top level. Tabiti really hasn't been in tough. I think his last fight was toughest fight he's ever been in, or at least at least looking on paper. I expect Dorticos. I mean, I'm going with the odds here where I expect Dorticos to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tabiti was able to poke and prod his way to a decision. He is more that kind of guy where he doesn't commit a lot to his shots. He usually tries to stay behind a tight guard. Again, and he works behind the jab. Maybe Dorticos will be able to work his way around it. If I'm not mistaken, Dorticos is kind of up there in age too. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'm going to favor Dorticos here by decision, but I don't feel that confident in my pick.
All right, next up from Hamed, another question: is pay-per-view good for boxing? I would say this. We're going to read his whole question, so follow along, Jeremiah. Is pay-per-view good for boxing? More and more people are streaming. So if it's good, why don't mainstream sports like soccer and the NFL go to pay-per-view? And why are more people illegally streaming pay-per-views now more than ever? Let's just start off the first. Is pay-per-view good for boxing, Jeremiah?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's a way of. I mean, a lot of times. So here's my thing: is it isn't, but it could be. But so in its current state, I mean, a lot of this is just overcompensation for guys that they can't pay for regular price, right? So they couldn't put these guys on Showtime and give them enough money for the salaries that they're demanding. I mean, basically. Again, I like boxing, and I think fighters should be paid well, but a lot of these guys are being overpaid, so they don't go anywhere else in an effort to keep those salaries.
I didn't know you were swallowing.
Go ahead.
So go ahead. That didn't sound right either. No, I apologize.
Sorry, my mouth's a little dry here, but. Yeah, but it's to me it feels like they're overcompensating for salaries they can't give them on TV networks. So in that regard, it's bad for boxing. And not only that, you look at the model and they're not giving you top down good cards. I mean, they're just not giving you enough value for your dollar. I think it could be okay for boxing if you went the World WWE WrestleMania route, and you just like every one once a year or something, you just put on an absolutely loaded card with championship fights from top to bottom, and the storylines are playing in. But unfortunately, it doesn't work in a sport this fractured.
Do you know?
What'd you say?
Tried? That's been tried.
Well, I think it. Well,
no,
I think it could work.
Howard, what was his name? The guy that worked for like Muhammad Ali's company. Was his name Howard Smith, late 70s, early 80s? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Not really.
Okay. Howard Smith was a guy that tried to put on a couple cards like that and couldn't pull it off. I'm trying to remember exactly what the hell happened there, because I think he was going to put on... the stuff was, he had some big-time boxing cards. I can't remember if his name was Howard. It was Howard something. I just can't remember what the hell his name was. But he was going to try to put, Weaver and Cooney on a card with, Ray Mancini fighting somebody and Michael Spence fighting somebody. And they promised all this money to these fighters. And then it just kind of fell apart and never happened. It ended up being he was a con artist. So he fits in with the guys we got today also. But I think also, looking back when I was younger, 1979, Leonard Benitez wasn't a pay-per-view. Leonard Duran was. Now, if that was today, that would mean Spence and Crawford, if I got to pay for that, I'm all right with that. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm accustomed to paying for bigger fights. And it used to be in the 90s. Hell, if a fight was on pay-per-view, I was buying it anyways because I figured it was a big fight. And you don't have too many of them now, but the problem you have now is they're putting fights on pay-per-view that shouldn't be. And you got illegal streaming because people aren't going to pay $75 to watch Amir Khan get the shit stomped out of him by Terrence Crawford. Plus, the reason people illegally stream right now is it's free and it's easy. I think that's the biggest thing. And
Right.
when you look at mainstream sports, like soccer and the NFL kind of is pay-per-view. Because if it's not your home team and you live in that area, you have to buy the NFL package to make sure you get the games anyways. So I think that it is kind of pay-per-view because you got to pay like $300 for that DirecTV ticket. But the thing is that $300 gives you every game from every team, where the $75 gives you Terrence Crawford and Amir Khan. So I don't think it's necessarily completely bad. It just needs to be for special fights. Spence Crawford. If Fury and Wilder keep winning, maybe Fury Wilder would be. Lomachenko against who would be? Nobody I can think of because I don't think there's that many.
Mikey Garcia, maybe.
I don't think that's even pay-per-view worthy anymore. I mean, I think Mikey kind of screwed that up by overreaching and going up to fight Errol Spence. So I don't know that there's too many fights worth it anymore. I think it is worth it, and I'm all right with it as long as it's just for big-time fights. But outside of possibly Garcia and Spence, there's been no fight this year that really should have been pay-per-view, and Garcia Spence probably shouldn't have been.
No, well, here's my thing: is I don't like the pay-per-view model. I mean, again, it'd be different if boxing had its stuff together. I mean, like you said, people are going to stream these things because it's overpriced. You're not getting enough value for your dollar. So why wouldn't you? I mean, I even saw the question posed on Facebook, like, is it okay to legally stream these things? Well, and then I ask, is it okay for the promoters to constantly take us as fools? Right? I mean, they're constantly putting on crap cards, and then, they wonder why the numbers suck. I mean, we didn't even hear the numbers for Terrence Crawford and Amir Khan.
There aren't any. It was 6. I already told you. I dropped it. My previous statement was 12. I think it was just 6 now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, they constantly put on these crap cards, and then, they wonder why the numbers are low, or, they get excited when you're getting like 300,000. I mean, it's just not worth it. Plain and simple. Again, I wouldn't mind it if there was more of a setup like the NFL, if you had, but this is the problem with the whole setup is that you've got all these different promoters who are trying to justify the salaries of their fighters, so they put on pay-per-views, right, to compensate them for it. Or you're paying for an app, or you're paying for a subscription, or you're paying for this, or you're paying for that. It would be nice if just boxing had a centralized governing body, and that way you could get one package from them and then worry about it, that way. But instead, we've got to go out of our way to try to figure out this one and that one and all these other ones. I mean, it gets confusing. I mean, sure, for us, it seems like there's only DAZN and Showtime and ESPN and, but then if you're a Brit, I don't know if it's more complex, like you got to pay for BT Sports or, Sky Sports or, all these other things that are just kind of tied into it. I mean, the system just needs simplified, and we need to get the best fighters fighting the best fighters in a timely fashion. And it could all be solved. But again, you've got these fractured entities trying to get their guys big salaries so they don't go elsewhere. And it's just messing up the system. But this is what we're going to continue to have unless somebody steps in and does something.
Well, and that's why I think the best thing to do is that hope everything works out for DAZN. Because at least we're not having to pay for the crap that we get. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, I don't know why people complain about DAZN, because at least we pay one time and you're paying $100, I'm just paying $9.99 because I paid for it from the start. Nobody would listen to me when I told them they should. Now it costs more. But when you look at it, I mean, in the last month, you've gotten more than $100 worth of fights, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you get Golovkin, Alvarez, I mean, it's going to be worth it. Right, I mean, that's the fight that is expected to happen in September, right around Mexican Independence Day. You're going to get the third fight, and that is arguably the biggest fight in all of boxing. So you can't really complain too much. And they said they were going to kill the pay-per-view model. You know, the other thing about DAZN that might be good, but again, I'm still cautious about DAZN. I don't know how deep they really are into boxing. It seems like they're balls deep now, but once they start getting those contracts from MLB or football or I mean, the NFL or, some of these other places, does their attention turn elsewhere? I mean, do they divert funds to a sport that's just set up better and has a working and comprehensive marketing machine? Boxing doesn't have that. And that's why a lot of these companies are just kind of, they're investing money in the company, but it's not, it's at arm's length, right? That's why, they're giving Canelo Alvarez a big contract, same with Gennady Golovkin, but they're also, there's a lot of stipulations in the contracts, like, hey, if you lose, you don't get as much, or if you get knocked out, you're no longer under contract, stuff like that. So I'm still weary of their long-term commitment, but it may be a good thing if they continue to invest that they're an outside voice. You know what I mean? It's like ESPN is already well aware of the crap that can happen in boxing. So maybe DAZN being a fresh face is something we can look forward to.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I just got a text about it too, and I just looked it up. So, yeah, it was Harold Smith, not Howard Smith. So, at the final tally, the 13th round, thank you for that, because I think the story was, you never heard this story, Jeremiah? You ought to look it up, because it's really interesting, because he made him, he was friends with Muhammad Ali, and Ali allowed him to use his name for a promotional company. And then to get the money, he was embezzling. I think he embezzled like $20 million from Wells Fargo Bank. But he had made all these promises and had all these big fights set up. And it was kind of like your WrestleMania thing where they had like 3 or 4 huge fights that would have normally been closed circuit by themselves. But he got busted on that before the fight ever happened. And the name of it, I think it was called MAPS. And they used Ali's name. And I think they paid huge purses to guys such as Tommy Hearns, Jerry Cooney, Scott Ledoux to lure them away from other promoters. And then the bank finally uncovered the scheme, which busted him. And I think Harold Smith went to jail in 1982. But he embezzled like $200 to $300 million internally involving Wells Fargo officials. Now, I may be a little bit wrong on this, but I think that I'm pretty right. And his name was like Eugene Fields, his real name. And the guy was a complete con artist. And I think that they actually arrested him like at or near Dodger Stadium. And he got busted pretty good for that. But he was a guy that tried to pull that off because I think he was trying to stage like Cooney and Weaver and like 4 or 5 different huge fights on the same card that everybody was looking forward to. But I remembered it once they said Harold Smith. So thank you to the 13th round, which they do a great job at the 13th round. And because I was thinking Howard Smith, but Howard Smith was like a heavyweight who I think Howard Smith fought and got knocked out by Ernie Shavers in the 70s also.
Oh, is that right? Well, the WrestleMania thing, I think, again, I'm being idealistic here, but if you had, a centralized governing body, and then every once in a while, because it's kind of like the World Boxing Super Series stuff that we've talked about, like if you had a tournament, and this would be one way to circumvent the Muhammad Ali Act, but you bring all the promoters together. And then one year you have, heavyweight, and then you have middleweight, and then you've got lightweight, and then, maybe, I don't know, flyweight, and then the next year you rotate to, cruiserweight, welterweight, featherweight, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my thinking is like if you had these big tournaments rotating all the time, I think that would generate excitement and big betting revenue as well. Well, if you could have, on the flip side, one centralized governing body, and then you had like every year you had a WrestleMania type thing, and they're all dictating this stuff, right? So they say, okay, well, we're getting Spence Crawford on the same card. It's like you can move it in weight divisions. I think that could be successful, but again, it would take a centralized governing body to do this sort of thing because WrestleMania still draws huge numbers and God, who's the guy who runs it? Vince McMahon. He's just done an excellent job of like weaving these tales and integrating the characters and the brands and the storylines and whatnot. I think you could pull something off like that, but it wouldn't take a crook, and in this environment it would be awfully tough to do.
Yeah, and if you talk about scandals, you know about the Ring magazine scandal with the U.S. Boxing Championships, right? 1976.
Yeah, is it when they rigged the ratings?
Well, what they did is they rigged who got in it because Don King went to ABC Sports after the 76 Olympics. And because of all the patriotism, the great boxing team, they set up a tournament. The only problem was the tournament ran through Don King. And the best story I remember coming out of that was 8 middleweights were invited to participate. All the boxers were supposed to be American boxers. And at the middleweight division, they did not include Marvin Hagler as one of the 8 best American middleweights, and this is 1976-77. However, there were 3 boxers, I think, that Hagler had already beat that were invited to take part. And I remember reading an article, I think in Boxing Illustrated or Ring magazine in the 80s, that Hagler said he was blacklisted because he refused to demand to hire King Associates Patty Floyd and Al Braverman as these managers. And the thing about Floyd and Braverman, they were also paid $20,000 each to administer the tournament and act as consultants. But this whole thing was a joke. And the interesting thing here, Marvin Hagler wouldn't go with Patty Floyd and Al Braverman, but he would later fight Mustafa Hamsho, and I'm pretty sure Floyd and Braverman were with Hamsho when he beat the hell out of him. But I basically did all of this just for one thing, and that is the fact that Scott Ledoux fought in this tournament against Johnny Boudreaux in 1977. He knocked Boudreaux down like once or twice in the fight. It was only an 8-round fight. He kicked Boudreaux's ass, and they gave Boudreaux the decision. That is the impetus that got them caught, because you remember Flash Gordon?
Right. Yes, I do.
He used to put out like an underground boxing magazine, and it was him and Alex Wallow. You know who Alex Wallow is. He was the associate producer at ABC at the time, and they uncovered what was going on and canceled the entire deal. They were supposed to pay Don King like $1.5 million and they were getting like 23 hours of national broadcast time to televise it over 6 months, and it was just a complete mess. And that is also, I think Ledoux and Boudreaux was the fight where Ledoux was so pissed off, and I think they fought this on an aircraft carrier, but Ledoux was so pissed off that he knocked Howard's wig off.
Yeah, Boudreaux was this a French guy too? Because Ledoux sounds a little bit French to me.
Well, he was Boudreaux. I don't know. I guess he was. He was a black dude though. But I guess you can still be French. But anything else? I wanted to talk about one other fight, because I watched the ESPN Plus little preview show for a while tonight. Have you heard of Michaela Meyer?
Yeah, she's the not terrible looking 140-pound girl.
She's actually, for a boxer, she's probably the hottest boxer I've seen this year.
Yeah, she's not as hot as that Kazakhstan chick, but
I don't know. Have I seen the Kazakhstan chick?
I'd have to get her name. I follow her on Instagram. She's pretty cute, but
can she speak English?
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, no, I know her because I
But
think I've seen her.
yeah, she's not bad. Olympian last time around, Lizbeth Crespo she fights. Lizbeth Crespo, from what I saw on film, didn't look half bad. This could be the most entertaining fight of tomorrow night. And they both have great stories. And Crespo is one that I think she's from Argentina, and she learned how to fight to try to defend her mom from her dad, who just beat the hell out of her all the time. So it's a pretty good story for ESPN, and you know ESPN, they'll put a saddle on that and ride that thing right into the ground.
Oh my God, will they? Jeez, I mean, like I said, when Jamel Herring fought, I mean, they talked about his daughter dying like 9 times before they ever got in the ring. I don't know Meyer's story. I've seen her. I knew she was in the Olympics, and like I said, she's not bad looking. She's pretty tall and skinny. I think she's at 140, 147. I could be wrong there, but okay, 135. Well, yeah, then she's
I
what a
know my
potential.
women's boxing dude. So she can fight Katie Taylor. Either one of these could be opponents for Katie Taylor. Well, Michaela Meyer against Katie Taylor. I mean, that could be a fight where maybe somebody will watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Meyer, I know I've seen her at least once, maybe twice, but she's pretty solid. Again for a lady.
What about boxing wise?
Oh, she's okay. Yeah, are we talking about boxing here? I don't know.
No, I wasn't. I just brought her
no,
up
I mean,
because I thought she's kind of cute.
Yeah, she's kind of cute. Yeah, I don't know what her attitude's like or whatnot. Because I'm always a little weary of that.
She's nice and she's cute. So tomorrow night we'll see if she can
don't they all seem nice and cute in the beginning though?
Until you marry them, and then like 10 years later, they're screaming at you to take out the freaking trash and pick up the maggots off of the garage floor and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's time to end this show. All right, anything else, Jeremiah?
No.
Tell everybody about the PayPal. We got a PayPal.
I was just quiet, man, because I was thinking about my wife riding my ass earlier today, and I zoned out there for a minute.
Wait a second, because there's 2 ways to take that.
Well, okay, all right. Well, not like she's strapped on a dildo and stuck it in my pooper, man. That's not.
Oh hell! You'll never let her do that again after that last time, will you?
Nah, man, my butthole hurts, man. I haven't shit right since, but nah, it's yeah, no more coffee after that. That's just that's all just ruined.
All right, so hell. You want to tell everybody about the PayPal sticker or PayPal button we have on the Grilling Truth website now?
Yeah. So I was able to get a PayPal button up there, and we'd like some of the feedback from some of you fans. A lot of websites rely on advertising dollars to make their way. It's a tough business to be in. In fact, anybody who runs a website is well aware of this issue. It's like, how do you generate enough income to do this as more than a hobby? Because that's what...
Without selling out to someplace big, and then all of a sudden we'll be shills for PBC, literally.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's what you get with the Mike Coppingers and the, Dan Raphaels. I'm never going to become one of those guys. I mean, it's not as if you can't work for an organization and still be somewhat independent, but you can't be completely objective if you're working under somebody else's wing. It's like, the Ring magazine, I've got a lot of respect for them, but they can't be completely objective because Golden Boy is looking over their shoulders, right? It's what is it now? The Athletic with Mike Coppinger, and again, ESPN with all these places, and you get political alliances because of it. We want to maintain our independence, and to do so, we're just hoping that fans can contribute and help us along our way. So you can go to the website, click the donate button. It's on the right hand side, just below the 2 articles, or the 2 top tiles or 4 tiles or whatever it is. But it's on the right hand side. All you got to do is scroll a little ways down, and donate. And we're trying to figure out but yeah, what I was going to say is, as fans, give us some feedback and. Tell us what you'd like us to do, or how we could work with you guys and get this thing done so we can maintain our independence.
Yeah, and we've thought about doing a Patreon page too. So if there's any suggestions of things you guys would like, I mean, anything from being a guest on the show or being a guest on a Legends show, maybe get asked somebody a question, one of the fighters. We've had guys like George Foreman on the network before, Larry Holmes, Carlos Palomino, and we're going to kick that back up here in the next few months, usually in the winters where we really hit those. But anything you could think of that you would like to do, I mean, we could even, get autographs from fighters, send you an autograph if you donate there. So Patreon, if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear them there also. Also, download our app on the iTunes store. You find us on there. If you get a chance, rate us, like us, just give us some feedback. The more we can do with that, the better. The great thing about us is we'll tell you what we think. And we're here every night. Occasionally we'll miss a night, but we're here basically 5 nights a week. And we're not just one night every week. So if you want boxing news, you can come here every night at approximately 11 o'clock and get this. Also, you go to the Facebook page. You can see Riddick Bowe versus Evander Holyfield the other night. You saw Floyd Mayweather at his best against Diego Corrales tonight. You'll be able to see Mayweather Castillo a little later tonight. Salvador Sanchez. We're going to have a Sanchez against Wilfredo Gomez on. So make sure if you like those, just even if it's $1, $5, $10, whatever it is, we appreciate it. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grilling Truth. And real quick, I want to remind everybody, the Sheridan Report tomorrow, and the On This Day, I'll be talking about the Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran match, so make sure you check me and Bobby Sheridan out at 2 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.